Quite a few. I like to edge my bets on these kinds of questions, Victoria.
Right, we're getting lots of brilliant, everybody. 3, all of them, 4, 7. Well, we're kind of in the right direction. Actually, it was 6 out of the 7 were over 70. Thank you very much. I want to screen grab all of that. So what we have is in America, let's not discuss the quality of those candidates and all the rest of the kind of the politics here, but just think you've got one of the world's largest superpowers, and you think that 6 people over 70 are capable of running that global superpower. And then you come back to, in this country, there was some very good research done last year by Jobs Go Public. I think PPMA was involved in this. And they asked people of 2 generations how well their skills were being used and recognized. So I think most of us might think that you'd think that the older generation would think their skills were more used than young people. I don't know. I think I might have jumped into that. But the actual finding was that so who said that they didn't think their skills were being used? Of the 16 to 24-year-olds, only a third don't think their skills are being used. But for people over 50, it's 75%. That's a heck of a lot of people who've got huge experience of life and skills to offer who don't think that their skills are being used. And then there was some research that I also came across in the construction industry, which I suspect is very typical. And they were asking construction leaders what their priorities were for the skills in terms of training and upskilling people. And they asked them about people over 50, what they thought about advanced IT skills. And 87% said these advanced IT skills are not necessary. Now that's sort of writing off a whole generation there. And this was things like robotics, 3D printing, virtual AR. It was all sorts of stuff here, which is now becoming every day. And what worries me is, and I've seen it now, I've sat on a number of boards where I see the older generation don't really understand or own tech. And what's happening is they're not applying their skills to decisions that are being made around technology. And therefore, a lot of very poor decisions are being made, or flip that around, that they're not only not being made, but they're not being maximized. So you're not drawing on all of that experience to develop the future of your business as technology comes in. So all of that's before people retire. And then you look at after people have retired. So the 100-year life is no longer big news, is it? And if you think about it, that means that you could be retired for longer than you worked. That's quite a big thought, really, isn't it? So what are we going to do? So you could be retired for longer than you worked. What are we going to do with that time? If you talk to people who have retired, as you were saying, Fiona, when you introduced me, you know, there's a tendency to think that it's a great joy, but I'm guessing that everybody can think of 1 or 2 people they know who have retired who are not that happy. And I thought this was just sort of a few exceptions. Actually, it's a very normal thing that I've come across now, that people have a really tough time. So that's why I think we need to rethink, Fiona.
Absolutely, that makes a lot of sense. And I'm conscious that we talk about diversity a lot in the workplace, but you know, I think if we're honest, you know, at least for me in the conversations I'm in, that tends to focus on ethnicity and gender, and we talk less about age. And kind of what's your sense of that, Victoria? Kind of why is that, and what do we need to do about it?
Well, I think the thing about diversity, you're quite right. Age is not really considered enough. It is considered in some senses, but not where I think it matters. I have to say that figure of 75% of people over 50 feeling that their skills aren't being used or recognized, it haunts me. I think it's a shocking figure. And I would say anybody over 50 has got amazing life skills, never mind all their other in-depth skills. And I use as an example, you know, it's easy to think, oh, well, these are all senior management people who've got skills to offer. But if you think about, say, let's take a dinner lady who's worked in a primary school for 20, 30 years. she will have extraordinary skills in understanding what children will eat or not, the child who's unhappy and how to sort of go and cajole them to eat maybe, or she'll spot some bullying going on and she'll have very good skills at going and just sort of gently calming things down and helping. Now, all of those are life skills around her area of experience. And if we look at next up, we have been getting our senior experienced people to mentor tech startups and students. And initially they've all said, oh, I don't know about technology, going back to what I've just said. I can't, what can I offer to a tech startup? And what they're soon realizing, I can't tell you how successful this is. The buzz in the rooms when we've got people together is quite extraordinary. And it kind of makes your heart lift. This whole intergenerational, both sides think that they don't want to hear from the other, couldn't be further from the truth. And what our older generation has got is they have experience of people skills. So somebody might be saying, I'm wanting to recruit, I don't seem to be very successful in keeping people, or I'm not sure about my leadership style, or cash flow, or how do I prioritize some of this? I'm a bit overwhelmed. So they can help sort things out for people. So I think what we need to be doing is really valuing what the older generation can bring in a very wide range of areas, and really thinking of them as an asset to the business, not as a declining asset, which I think is what's happening at the moment too much.
Absolutely. And to what extent, Victoria, and I kind of have to mention the C word, do you think that COVID has affected, our view of age and retirement, in helpful or unhelpful ways?
I think both, actually. I think there's a lot of contradictions going on at the moment. Do you know how many doctors and nurses were asked to come out of retirement to help in COVID? I don't know whether anybody knows how many that was. It was 65,000 doctors and nurses were asked to come out of retirement to come and help the country in a crisis. Actually, I've got shivers down my spine when I say that, because suddenly when the country's in a crisis, you recognize, my goodness, they have amazing skills. There was a proposal, I don't know whether it happened, but the Education Policy Institute asked for teachers to come out of retirement to help young, children, particularly from disadvantaged areas, in catch-up, so that to help coach children from who hadn't done so well through COVID to catch up. And I mentioned just now about our next up, the mentors that we've got. We launched with Leeds City Council as COVID hit. We launched a free site to get people mentoring all sorts of people, and it's been phenomenal. The stories are just amazing. But equally, you've got to balance that against it. You've got the whole thing about shielding people over 70, done for the best of intentions by the government and health professionals. We've seen so many people over 70 saying, hang on a second, I'm not old. I do not want to be put into this fragile category. And you know why it's happening, but it perhaps has reinforced people thinking, oh, 70 plus, you're really past it. I should say that I am, nobody can see me now, which is such a shame, but I am 65 tomorrow, and you all going to go, woo, really? Are you really? And I do not feel, I launched a business next up 2 years ago, and I want to work for another 25 years. Why not? The Queen is 94 and still hugely contributing to the country. Lots of people are. We have got to rethink age. I'm loving what I do. It may not look 9 to 5 in quite the same way, but I think this whole thing about, has COVID affected age? I think it has, but it's good and bad. And I don't know. I'm hoping we land on it being a really positive thing, that the older generation has a lot to contribute to society.
Absolutely. So kind of bringing us to a practical level, and people, please do pop up questions in the chat and we'll bring them in, and we'll make sure we pause before the end to field any questions. But to get us into practicalities and build on this passion, Victoria, what, as employers, what do we need to be doing, and what specifically as HR teams should we be doing in our organizations on this agenda?
I think, it's very easy. It's difficult for HR teams to get their heads around a lot of this. Absolutely, your priorities are to recruiting younger generations, to what's fair pay, looking at all sorts of things, working with trade unions. There's a big agenda for HR teams. But I think the first thing, and I think it's becoming more important, and people are beginning to recognize there's something here we need to look at. To be honest, I've had a lot of conversations with HR teams in both private and public sectors, and most of them are sort of thinking there's something here we need to look at, but I don't know what the issues are, and I don't know what we should be doing. It's good that they're now waking up, and in a way that's an opportunity for us, that we're now being able to help share huge amounts of research we've done. One of the things I think is to understand what the issues of retirement are. Again, there was some research that shows that 40%, you're 40% more likely to be clinically depressed in retirement, and you're 60% more likely to be physically disabled, if you like, or with a physical condition. Now, some of that you're going to say that's a natural part of aging, but I still think those are quite big figures. And I think most people will be surprised, particularly around the 40% being clinically depressed, more likely to be clinically depressed than the rest of the population. And there are two things that people need that are going to help them not be clinically depressed and be physically and mentally active. And that is finding purpose. Now, I have done huge research around this, and everyone kind of almost does, anybody who talks about retirement talks about you need to find purpose as almost a throwaway comment. Let's just pop down to the supermarket when you retire and pick up a bag of purpose. And actually what I'm discovering is it's extremely difficult for people to find purpose. It requires quite a lot of time, thinking, helping. A lot of people have been so work-oriented, they've forgotten what they care about in life, actually, a lot of people. So the other thing is about face-to-face socializing. And again, I don't think this is going to surprise anybody really when you think about it, but this is all to do with the loneliness. But you're more likely to live longer if you're actively face-to-face. A lot of research has been done around some of those communities in Japan, Sardinia, I think in Mexico, where people normally live to really old ages. And what they're finding is it's this face-to-face contact and the purpose that's more important than, say, smoking or exercise or, heart disease, all sorts of things. This is the more important thing. And again, I think most people will kind of, when you start thinking about it, it's not that surprising, but it is surprising, if that makes sense. So I think for HR teams, we need to help employees to understand what's about to hit them and to plan for it. The more you plan, the less of a shock, and I mean, it's like a bereavement, to be honest, retirement, the less likely you are to be hit with it. I think we have to rethink training for people for 50 plus. I'm passionate about not letting this generation off the hook about technology. We've got to get them in. They're perfectly capable. They've got to change their mindset about it all, but they're perfectly capable. We've really got to think how we value those skills of 50 plus. And I'm not going to go into too much now, but every organization has initiatives, and particularly in the public sector. Things like you've got zero carbon initiatives, increasing women into senior roles, recruiting from more diverse pools of talent. Why don't we get some of these senior people, not senior, I mean senior in terms of their 50 plus, or if you like, before they retire, get them to go into this, go and get them to research what best practice is, find things they really care about, by the way, not just for the sake of it, and start getting them involved and see if you can't continue that involvement once they've left, if we can sort of build up a passion. But I think getting them involved, they bring a huge value to a lot of this. So I think we have just got to help people build new networks and to continue after they retire. And to be honest, for the public sector, you're hearing all the impact on the older generation if they don't have something worthwhile with purpose. This is a win-win for public sector, because in many ways they may be volunteering and picking up a lot of the things that you're having to cut back on. But also, if they're more active, they're less likely to be ill physically and mentally, and they're less of a drain on public resources. So therefore, it seems to me it's a real win-win, way beyond just, oh, it's a nice thing to do.
Absolutely. And we've got a question here from Tracy, Victoria, which is, do you know of places that have really embraced a positive approach to unretirement, where they've retained skills, knowledge and experience while still kind of developing and enabling talent to be developed in others?
Tracy, it's a really great question, and I regret to say, no, I don't. There are lots of pockets, particularly in the voluntary sector. There are lots and lots of pockets of really good practice, but I have yet to come across. I mean, we're starting now. I hope people understand I'm running a business. What I'm trying to do is ensure that we've got money coming in as a business, but my passion long term is to become more of a social enterprise, if you like, so that I can start doing a lot more in voluntary and charitably, if you know what I mean, to help people. But we're doing now working with large professional firms and corporates helping their senior people retire. And you might think they don't need this help because they've got so much behind them. Weirdly, they are some of the worst hit by all of this, really badly hit. And seriously, I've met a lot of people who are seriously depressed. So a lot of these firms are now starting to think they should do things. And it is more of a, we should do it rather than they see any benefit to the firm. So yes, they're beginning to have pockets of, but I think the charities, there are lots of little pockets all over the place that are doing really good things.
Absolutely. And just Victoria, I see that Tracy's followed up and saying it'd be great to just from people who are attending conference or in this session to share their kind of ideas and things they might have experience of. And I know, Victoria, that you were potentially offering some support to different organisations. I wondered if it now might be a good moment to mention that before we get taken into the main session.
Yeah. What I would really like is what we're offering to do, one, maybe more free pilots with probably councils or other public sector organisations. First of all, to help train their HR teams in understanding the issues and work with them, not just sort of stand up and talk, but work with them to work through what's the impact of this and what might be possible. Of course, budgets are badly hit, but a lot of this is sort of win-win stuff. And I think it doesn't have to be expensive, a lot of this. It's just understanding and thinking, oh, we could do this. So we're offering free pilots if anybody wants to take that up. And there are also, if anybody can post on here, if you would be interested, we're just finding there's some research. I'd like to continue our mentoring site, but there's absolutely no money in it whatsoever. So I can't see to make a business model. So I'm looking to see if there's any funding. And I think I've come across UK Research and Innovation, I think it is, are offering, they've got £12 million of funding, and there's some other pockets of funding to increase, I always get caught up in the words for this, but older people's active lives by 5 years. Now, I would love to work with, you know how when you go for research, if you can collaborate with different people, that we could do some things together. I would love to go for some of this research. I am on holiday at the moment, by the way, but don't worry about that. But I have been doing some quick research, and I think we might be able to qualify for some of this funding. And I'd love to work in partnership with others. So I'm just thinking about how do I put that together.
Thanks, Victoria. So, absolutely, if people are interested in that, please feel free to pop it in the chat, and I'm sure we can follow up, or likewise to contact me directly, and I can pass details through to Victoria or straight to Victoria. I think we've got about just under a minute before I hand over. So just wanted to check if there's any final questions or reflections from the room to pass to Victoria. Do feel free to just unmute and shout up.
I'd love to know if this is resonating with people. If we were in a hall, this is great in a way, but I'd love just to get some feedback, kind of like almost sort of a hands up. I don't know how we do that, but is this resonating with people, or do you think I'm talking a load of nonsense, basically?
We're getting some thumbs up,
great.
in the chat, nods, and Tracy's, like I said, that the GM Collaborative would certainly be interested in working with you, Victoria. So yeah, I think what I can see here, and people also sharing personal experience about the shock that it can be to people who reach this point of retirement. So
could we capture these, Fiona, because I'd love to go back to people and to pick up, if we could sort of make sure we keep the chat here.
I'm sure that is a way. And Caroline Nugent is also saying as well, they need a really good understanding of the sandwich generation and who are trying to deal with kids, parents of work, as well as potentially going through menopause. And that we don't lose women as a consequence of that, and so recognizing that element of
very good point, very
really important as well.
Well, I'm really sorry nobody could see me. I'm beaming away here because it's a subject I'm so passionate about. thank you for inviting me. It's a very strange experience here, but I can see all of you. So thank you for asking me, Fiona. And I wish everybody luck. And I hope that this is the beginning of something of us all working together, because I'd love to help and really do something with using the experience of this older generation. We are wasting it at the moment, honestly, we really are. Let's all do something and make a change here.
Thank you, Victoria. Really big thanks. And I know we've had some fantastic conversations on this, and it's really opened my eyes as well, who is probably someone who still does look forward to maybe being able to put their feet up and go on a cruise, but maybe when I get nearer to that.
No. We'll have a chat about that, Fiona. I'll soon change your mind about all of that.
Maybe that says more about being stuck in a hot loft on a, at the moment than anything else. But no, thank you so much.
Okay, bye-bye. Thank you.
So